Back with you tonight here on In Focus on Newsroom Africa Channel 405. Now, numerous reports of growing malnutrition in the Eastern Cape have prompted the South African Human Rights Commission to hold an inquiry into childhood malnutrition and starvation in the province. Among these was a Daily Maverick report in March that about 14 children under the age of 5 years who starved to death in the past 15 months in Nelson Mandela Bay was reported, and hundreds more are receiving treatment for acute malnutrition. This is happening in a country that throws away up to a third of all food it produces, most of which is nutritional and is still in good condition and perfectly edible. It also adds up to a cost to the economy of around 61 billion rands every year. Observers say this food is collected and preserved in good time. If this food rather is collected and preserved in good time, it can be used to address food insecurity and avoid the unnecessary deaths and diseases. Joining us now to share how this can happen at scale is Food Waste Prevention and Distribution Organization, FoodForward South Africa's Managing Director, Andy Plessis. Andy, good to have you with us, and thank you very much for your time. I mean, if we really talk about this particular conversation, you and I have been having it at least for the past 3 years or so. And I'm just firstly asking myself, why has it taken so long to have an inquiry of this nature conducted into malnutrition in the country?
Evening, Tabo, and thank you very much for having us. Absolutely. You know, this is a sad state of affairs that it has taken this long for the Human Rights Commission to undertake this inquiry. And I think part of the reason is because, you know, when the story first broke, as you mentioned in your introduction at the beginning of the year, we immediately reached out to the Department of Health in the Eastern Cape and in the Department of Nutrition to the director there. And we said, you know, we've read the report. We are concerned about what's happening. We are supporting over 200 organizations in the Eastern Cape, mostly in rural communities. Can we at least sit down and have a chat? And we've been trying for the past 6 months to just have a conversation with them to say, we are here to help. How can we help? So I think part of the problem is just dysfunctionality in the Department of Health. And I think the province as a whole is not managing the problem of malnutrition in a coordinated manner.
So what are the root causes? I mean, let's go over them once again, of the fact that we are seeing such huge numbers of children suffering severe acute malnutrition caused by hunger.
So obviously inequality, widespread inequality and poverty are the root causes of what is going on, especially in the Eastern Cape. But I think, you know, more poignantly, we need to make sure that, you know, the Department of Health it's their prerogative to make sure that our children are healthy. So in South Africa, we have the highest rate of stunting in the world. That's a malnutrition-related disease where children are too short for their age. They don't have the proper height for their age because they don't get the proper nutrition between the ages of 0 and 5. So our children up to the age of 5 years old, 27% of those children suffer from malnutrition across South Africa. It's the highest rate of stunting in the world in a country that has enough food, that produces enough food to feed all its people. It's rather ironic. The Western Cape used to be, had the highest incidence out in the Worcester area, just outside of Cape Town, had the highest incidence of stunting. But we're seeing the Eastern Cape, some severe numbers coming out that are hugely concerning.
Yeah. Practical example, I mean, you made your presentation yesterday there. I wonder what some of the solutions that you presented to them that were possible. But we hear, for example, from the South African Human Rights Commission that in this last financial year, the Department of Social Development returned back to Treasury 67 million rands. If the 67 million rands would have been put towards dealing with this, what kind of ground would have been able to be covered and the impact that this would have had?
Absolutely. And, you know, it's just concerning that that amount of money was underspent, and it was rather unfortunate and that we had to witness the loss of lives. So We actually had a program that we undertook with the Department of Health in the Western Cape for the past 2 years, called a Household Food Security Program, where we specifically targeted children suffering from malnutrition, as well as pregnant mothers that were underweight, that were reporting at various community health centers or clinics, as we best know them, that were reporting to be underweight, because we know that statistics show that an underweight pregnant mother will give birth to an underweight child most likely. And so we ran a program with the Department of Health where through the various community health centers were providing home-based assessment information and doing the home-based assessments and providing that information to the provincial health department. And on a weekly basis, we received that data from the health department, and we delivered door-to-door a food parcel to those indigent families where food security was at risk and where children were suffering from malnutrition. And that program took place just over 2 years, a very successful program. We had social partners on board, Pick and Pay's Feed the Nation campaign, as well as the Global Food Banking Network that supported us financially as well to make sure that we provided the nutritious food to these people. So we explained to the Human Rights Commission in our presentation yesterday that we have a good track record over the past 13 years of addressing food insecurity, but more importantly, household food insecurity. And as we explained this to the Human Rights Commission, the commissioners, they just said, you've got the experience, you've got the capacity, you've got the foundation. Why is this not happening? And we've just said to them, we've been trying to have a meeting with the Department of Health to just address this. Coincidentally, Thabo, yesterday after my presentation, I got a call from the Department of Health asking, can we meet next Monday? So that is promising, and we do hope that we can take the conversation further to make sure that and yesterday also the Human Rights Commission, the Office of the Premier presented several hotspots where they pinpointed where the malnutrition is in communities. And while we viewed that, we've been trying to get that information from the Eastern Cape Health Department. And so we hope to get that before our meeting on Monday so that we can put a plan together to constructively address this issue.
Yeah, I hope it's just not a reaction to the fact that the South African Human Rights Commission is planning to hold those who are supposed to be implementing stakeholders to account for neglect of duty, which, it would be a sad day if that's what it would take for them to actually begin to do what they need to do. But let's look at measures that the relevant role players need to begin to take now to decrease the prevalence of severe acute malnutrition. You've already mentioned the Department of Health. Are there other role players that need to come on board here?
Absolutely. So in our view, the Department of Social Development needs to actually lead the way. It is their prerogative to make sure that food security is addressed in indigent communities through their social relief of distress grant and other forms. So the Department of Social Development needs to come on board. Yesterday, the South African Council of Churches also presented, and I think, getting their network on board would be most useful. And then the Office of the Premier certainly needs to get involved to make sure that they unlock the necessary funding to make sure this program works. But the beautiful thing about a partnership, a cooperative partnership, is that we can make the rand stretch further. So, for example, we do not need to procure huge amounts of food. As you mentioned earlier in your introduction, FoodForward South Africa receives huge amounts of food donations from our various social and corporate partners, manufacturers, retailers, wholesalers. And we are able to make sure that the nutritious food parcel goes into the homes that need it the most. So we need a cooperative approach here. We need a targeted approach, making sure that households that are suffering from malnutrition, and especially our children 0 to 5 years and our pregnant mothers and nursing mothers, that they get the proper nutrition they need so that we prevent this problem from escalating.
Yeah. Looking at the global environment and the economic and socio-political issues that need to be addressed, but also looking at issues of climate change, it does seem like even environment, Department of Environment, I suppose, would need to come on board here. Department of Agriculture would need to come on board here. Maybe even other stakeholders coming on to deal with this issue that continues also to add constraints further into the food security question.
100%. I totally agree with you. And I think, we need to not only think of addressing the short-term problem, we need to look at the long-term effects of climate change. I mean, look at the Eastern Cape as a typical example. Nelson Mandela Bay Metro is having water shortages and water scarcity problems. They're reaching day zero very shortly if they don't get rain. But East London had flooding over the past few days. And so we're finding that these climate change effects are happening. Look at what's happening in KZN with the recent floods in April, where FoodForward South Africa is still assisting people, displaced people in community halls, 29 community halls, over 5,500 people still living in those community halls and still being affected by continuous flooding in some of the affected communities there. So climate change is a real problem. It's affecting food security, and we need government to put long-term plans in place to mitigate against climate change.
Yeah, it is Women's Month, of course, and the conversation also around whether or not we can adopt gender-sensitive strategies that look at the economic empowerment of women in particular in this particular space.
Without a doubt, the research shows that when money is given to women, they take care of the family, whereas when money is given to men or social assistance given to men, it doesn't benefit the entire family. So women need to play an integral role in this process of addressing food security and addressing climate change on a holistic basis. We cannot have solutions without them being at the forefront of those conversations.
Andy, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on this evening. That's the Managing Director of FoodForward South Africa, Andy Plessis, there with us.